You're listening to the Steven Tauriello Show, building a platform of liberty for people in search of truth with a dash of hope and a life worth living. The Steven Tauriello Show. And now, here's Steven.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. So what if I told you that the police actually knew about Robert Card and they actually didn't stop him? What if I said the police knew about Robert Card a month before he went on this shooting rampage, killing 18 people? Well, we now know they did. So I got an article here from ABC Channel 6 News. Police were alerted just last month about a Maine shooter's threats, and they said, quote, "We couldn't locate him." So police across Maine were alerted just last month to veiled threats about the U.S. Army reservist who could go on to carry out the worst mass shooting in state's history. One of a string of missed red flags that preceded the massacre. Two local law enforcement chiefs told the Associated Press that a statewide awareness alert was sent in mid-September to be on the lookout for Robert Card after the firearms instructor made threats against his base and fellow soldiers. But after stepped-up patrols of the base and a visit to Card's home, neither of which turned up any sign of him, they moved on. So these people knew. So the actual system worked. As far as if you see something, say something, but it was actually the police that dropped the ball on this. This is a big, big mistake. How many people knew about this guy's condition and that he was dangerous? I mean, they had to know he was dangerous enough to send a patrol over to his house. They had to know he was dangerous if they put extra patrol units out on the streets. And then just 2 weeks later, because you don't find him, you just give up. So essentially, Robert Card, this mass shooter, slipped through the cracks. And then a month later, conducted a mass shooting, killing 18 people and injuring like 20. So military officials declined to comment further about Card, specifically whether threats relayed to the sheriff in September were new or the same ones Card had made during an Army Reserve training exercise near West Point, New York, in July. That's when police say Card was committed to a mental health facility for 2 weeks after acting erratically and, quote, hearing voices and threats to shoot up a military base. Authorities say the 40-year-old Card opened fire with a high-powered rifle on a bowling alley and then a barn loosed in Wednesday night. Yes, we know this. So Card's case stands at a glaring example of missed red flags, with many unanswered questions about the military, police, mental health professionals, and relatives could have done to prevent the massacre. While Maine does not have a red flag law, it does have a more limited yellow flag law that would still allow police to petition a judge to take a person's firearms away if a medical practitioner deems the person to be a threat. For his part, Saco Police Chief Clements defended his department's response to the alert about Card, which he described as a, quote, generic thing that came out saying, hey, you've had some report that this guy's made some veiled threats. Clements note that his department gets many such alerts and that his officers gave this one its due attention, keeping an eye on the base for any sign of Card. Never came in contact with this guy, never received any phone calls from the reserve center saying, hey, we got somebody who's causing a problem, he said. We never got anything. Another law enforcement agency that came in contact with Card was the New York State Police, which on July 16th was called to West Point by commanders of the Army Reserve's 3rd Battalion with concerns about Card's erratic behavior and, quote, threats to the members of his military unit during a training exercise. According to a state police document obtained by AP, the state police troopers took Card, a sergeant first class, to the Keller Army Community Hospital at West Point for what would be 2 weeks of mental health evaluation. What New York State Police did about Card's threats is unclear. The agency declined to comment to the AP on the case and did not respond to a request for reports or possible body camera footage of their interactions with Card. Quote, this is an active investigation and the New York State Police does not comment on active investigations, nor investigations in which we are not the lead agency. It said in a statement Friday before Card was found dead. A state police spokesman refused to comment Saturday. So there you go. So this guy slipped through all the cracks, slipped through all of them. This guy was in the hospital. You had witnesses saying that he was hearing voices. He even threatened to shoot up a base. But yet somehow a month later, this guy was allowed to not only keep his firearms in his house, but he was allowed to go shoot up 2 locations, a bowling alley and a bar, killing 18 people. This is going to be huge. And all these districts, all these jurisdictions, the state police, the local police, all of them need sued. The families of these 18 victims all need to file lawsuits against these companies. What is the point of having a system in place about if you see something, say something, if when you actually say something, nothing happens? So because they couldn't make contact with this guy for 2 weeks, they just let it go. I mean, I get it. I do. I get it. They probably do get thousands of these calls. They've probably seen this situation a 1,000 times. But it just takes that one time that they don't follow through, and now 18 people are dead, and I don't know how many injured. 20 injured? That's why you got to follow through with everything, man. That's exactly why. So this just came out today from the Associated Press. That story, I'll leave that article. It goes on. I'll leave it in my podcast description so you guys can look at it. Pretty disheartening, man, to know that 18 people would still be alive today if these cops would have made, I don't know, a better effort of getting in contact with this guy. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of red flags there that they just kind of glossed over, you know? Like, I mean, if somebody's threatening to shoot up a military base and you know this guy has guns, you know he's going to a hospital, a mental hospital, you know he's hearing voices, like that seems like pretty serious stuff to me. It's not like some veiled threat like they claim it is. And so, of course, you know, the entire thing's going to be investigated. These families are going to file a lawsuit, I guarantee it. And these jurisdictional police, these police precincts are going to have to pay out. Because that's, you know how pissed off I would be if I lost a family member because this guy managed to slip through not 1, but 2 or 3 red flags? It's unfortunate, man. It really is. So I just wanted to start that off. I just seen that right before I came on here to the show. There's something we got to get into, folks. This is a trend that I'm starting to see a lot, especially with Republicans such as myself, who were former Democrats, now turned Republican. We got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a big problem. And you guys remember, you can go back about a month when RFK Jr. first announced he was running for president. I remember getting behind this microphone and telling everybody he was going to be a problem for Republicans. And that's exactly what happened because I could see it. I could see it. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a wolf in sheep's clothing, man. There's nuanced little things that you can see when he's talking and he's doing these speeches and these media appearances. There's just certain things that he says that just is very, very concerning when it comes to if this guy were to win. I think he would probably be pretty radical on the left. As far as his environmental ideas, the guy does not like nuclear, he does not like fossil fuels, and he is so good, just like a typical Democrat, he's so good at beating around the bush and getting and evading answers. But he does it in such a clever way that he actually does answer it without actually answering it. And so I'm telling all my listeners right now, watch out for RFK Jr., and Donald Trump has a real problem on his hands, and they better get ahead of this before it gets too out of control, because I'm already starting to see a lot of Republicans supporting RFK Jr. You know, not the hardcore Trump supporters. You know, Donald Trump has their vote no matter what. I'm talking about the people that don't necessarily like Trump, would vote for Trump if that was the only thing left in the Republican side, but RFK Jr. is that oddball. He's that one we got to watch out for because he's getting a lot of Republicans, moderate Republicans saying, oh, he's great, I like him, because people have a feeling, people are exhausted, okay? People, they don't like getting into politics every day, all day like I do, or maybe some of you do. And so, you know, Donald Trump to them is exhausting. They don't really understand the battle that we're in. They don't understand what time it is. All they know is they're tired of politics. They're exhausted about talking about it. They're exhausted about hearing about Donald Trump and the impeachments and Joe Biden and the Democrats, Republicans, this party, that party, the uniparty. And they just want something different. They just want change. And RFK Jr. gives them that change. But we need to be real clear here. RFK Jr. is not a Republican, okay? RFK Jr. is a Democrat. He endorsed Hillary Clinton, not once, but twice. He supported Hillary Clinton, not once, but twice. So we need to make sure that we take care of this RFK Jr. thing right now, because I don't want this getting too out of control. So I got an article here, hat tip to Andrew Mark Miller. RFK Jr. endorsed Hillary Clinton multiple times and praised her character. So presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who recently announced he was running as an independent after initially running as a Democrat, has a long history of supporting two-time failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, despite campaigning as a voice critical of the Washington, D.C. establishment. In 2000, Kennedy touted Clinton's character in a campaign ad supporting her campaign for a U.S. Senate seat in New York. 8 years later, Kennedy reaffirmed his support for Clinton by endorsing her in her 2008 presidential run. Quote, Hillary Clinton has the strength and experience to bring the war in Iraq to an end and reverse the potentially devastating effects of global warming, Kennedy said in a press release. Quote, I watched proudly as Hillary won over New Yorkers across the state in her race for the Senate seat my father once held. Since then, she's been reelected in a landslide victory and proven that she is ready to lead this nation from her first day in office. Hillary will inspire a real change America needs. Kennedy stumped for Clinton on the campaign trail in her quest for the White House against eventual President Barack Obama, and once Obama had won, Kennedy praised her appointment as Obama's Secretary of State, calling her great. Now, I don't know about you, but Hillary Clinton was not a great Secretary of State. And I think we really need to push on this guy about how he really feels about Hillary Clinton, because I'm telling you right now, if this guy is a huge fan of Hillary Clinton, we don't need to walk away. We need to run away. Republicans need to run away from RFK Jr. And the problem is, he may be a good dude. He may be nice. The problem is it all just seems too fishy to me. He is getting millions in donations right now. The Washington establishment is pumping millions and millions of dollars into his campaign right now. That is the right and the left, Republicans and Democrats. The Washington swamp loves RFK Jr. And I gotta say, I kind of made a big mistake on this. I actually came out and said that I would like to see RFK Jr. run with Donald Trump, but after looking a little bit into him, I don't know about that. I'm not too sure about that. There's just certain subtle things that he says and things that he's done in the past he is definitely a huge environmentalist. And look, I think everybody in the Republican Party cares about the environment. We care about clean air and clean water. Like, we get it. But when it comes to man-made climate change and it being an existential threat, and to treat it as if it's something that we can control, like, that's a problem to me. So, and that's exactly where Kennedy comes from as far as his environmental ideology. So when Clinton ran again for president in 2016 in a race won by Donald Trump, who had donated to Democrats, including Hillary Clinton in the past, Kennedy continued his vocal support with an endorsement. I'm solidly for Hillary, Kennedy told Larry King in an interview about his long-term friend. I think Hillary is going to be a very, very good president. On the campaign trail as an independent candidate, Kennedy has distanced himself from both political parties, writing in a Fox News opinion piece this month that he declared independence from the two political parties and the corrupt interests that dominate them, and the entire rigged system of rancour and rage, corruption and lies that has turned government officials into indentured servants of their corporate bosses. Critics have voiced concerns about where Kennedy stands on issues, including Americans for Limited Government President Rick Manning, who wrote a townhall.com piece that the presidential candidate is a far-left ideologue and radical environmentalist and a wolf in sheep's clothing. Yep. At the same time, Kennedy has ruffled liberal feathers by expressing support for the Second Amendment and a stronger southern border. He has also faced scrutiny over the, quote, hurtful COVID-19 comments. The Kennedy campaign told Fox News Digital that it's true that Bobby Kennedy used to be a Democrat, but like millions of Americans, Bobby no longer feels at home in the Democratic Party, and he doesn't feel at home in the Republican Party. Both parties are now controlled by powerful corporate interests who don't have the American people's best interest at heart. This is why he's running for president as an independent. I agree. I agree. But you know what? If he really wants to prove that he really does believe in what he says, then he needs to run as Donald Trump's vice president. Now, I get it. Donald Trump hasn't picked a VP yet. And honestly, I don't even know why the RNC is having these stupid debates. This is ridiculous. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on these stupid campaign debates, and nobody's watching them. Nobody cares. Everybody knows who's going to be the next Republican candidate, okay? Why are they wasting all this money? This just goes to show you that how much the establishment hates Donald Trump. If they were actually interested in Donald Trump and supporting Donald Trump, then they would stop all this. Not one person is over single digits. Mike Pence just dropped out of the race today. So it's like, why do they continue to drop all this money? What they should be doing is taking all this money, putting it into the boots on the ground in these swing districts. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. They said between both parties, there's going to be anywhere between $2 to $4 billion spent on campaigning. That's insane. Insane. And so I think if RFK Jr. really wants to prove to the American people that he is anti-establishment, then when the time comes, Donald Trump should pick him as his VP. And then we'll see. Look, I'm all ears. If you're a guy that's sitting there telling me that you're anti-establishment and that the government no longer has the American people's interest at heart, I couldn't agree with you more. But the thing is his vocal support for decades for Hillary Clinton. This guy should have knew this from day one, that Hillary Clinton was a scandalous, crooked, corrupt politician that is in it for money and money only. But he continued to voice his support for her. So I have a big problem with that. If you're unwilling to denounce your support for somebody like Hillary Clinton, when this woman was just out here talking about how Republicans need formally deprogrammed, like we're back in East Germany in the 1930s, like that's a real problem. And you should have immediately denounced her. But no, he goes on and says she's going to make a great president, she's going to do this, she's going to do that. So look, Donald Trump has a real RFK Jr. problem. And they need to get ahead of this quick and in a hurry, because he's going to create a big problem. I see it all around me. I see it on the streets. People love RFK Jr., and I'm talking about Republicans, not so much Democrats. Why? Because Democrats don't even really know this guy's running. They don't know anything about him because the Democrat Party is the party of censorship. So they're just censoring RFK Jr. out of existence. Democrats don't even know what RFK stands for. You ask them, you watch videos on the street where they're doing these street polls, and you'll say, what do you think about Donald Trump? Oh, no, absolutely not. Okay, what do you think about RFK Jr.? Oh, I don't know anything about him. What do you think about Joe Biden? Yes, I'll vote for Joe Biden. This is what is happening in real time on the streets. So I think it's very important for the Trump campaign to buckle down on bringing RFK Jr.'s poll numbers down a little bit, because he is skyrocketing in the polls. I could see it. Everybody can see it. And you're going to start hearing his name more and more as we move on. And look, if the guy truly is an anti-establishment figure, he really wants to be an anti-establishment candidate, then okay, we'll roll with that. But I just find it very coincidental how RFK Jr. pops up out of nowhere, and you don't see nothing about him anymore on the Democrat media. It's like they got a memo saying, look, we're not going to talk about RFK Jr. anymore. We're going to let him pull votes from Donald Trump. We're not going to air any of his stuff. We're not going to promote him. Even though he's an independent, even though he's in this race, we're not going to say anything about him. They know that RFK Jr. does more damage to Donald Trump than Joe Biden. They know this, and all the polls are saying this too. So Donald Trump and this campaign have a big RFK Jr. problem that they need to get figured out. A wolf in sheep's clothing? I'll be honest with you, I think he is. I said this, I know I said about a month ago that he would have been great running as VP with Donald Trump, and he still could be. But as of right now, I'm just telling you, we got to bring his numbers down a little bit, because he's taking in a lot of Republican votes, and he's not going to be president. He's just not. Okay, I know we all said that about Donald Trump, and where, it sounds like I'm talking about Donald Trump back in 2015. But I'm telling you right now, RFK Jr. is a plant. I think this guy is a secret plant in order to pull votes from Donald Trump. That's what I think. And the media stopped talking about him all of a sudden, when in the beginning they were saying, oh, look at him, he's anti-vax, he's anti-this, he's pro-Second Amendment, he's pro-border wall, and then they just stopped. Boom. Now you don't hear anything about him. You don't hear anything good, you don't hear anything bad. And he's continuously going on right-wing media outlets. Even personal friends of mine say they love RFK Jr. That, to me, is a big problem. I don't know why these people hate Donald Trump so much. It is beyond my comprehension how anybody could hate Donald Trump more than they love their country. I just don't get it. So I don't know. We'll find out. We will find out. So this is something interesting, speaking of the Second Amendment, and kind of on our first topic that we touched on. I got a article here from the Washington Post. Maine killings prompt spike in gun purchases. So Lex Kerr walked into a bustling gun store 10 miles north of the city where a mass shooting took the lives of 18 and injured 13 this week, and declared for the first time that she wanted a gun. Kerr, 25 years old, with a thatch of pink dyed hair and a rose tattooed around her neck, said she watched news of the twin rampages carried out at a bowling alley and bar in Lewiston, Maine, and wondered what she might have done in that situation. A phone call wouldn't have saved somebody, Kerr said. A knife wouldn't have saved somebody. A taser wouldn't have saved somebody. Your best chance of survival in that situation is having a gun. Several of the area's gun dealers were open for business Thursday, the day after the shootings, while the search for the suspect gunman was continuing, while nearly all other businesses abided by the shelter-in-place order advising residents to stay off the streets. Some gun stores answered spiking interest in gun ownership by opening their doors. They've since reported abnormally high sales of all types of firearms. Store owners who spoke to the Washington Post said buyers cited numerous reasons, including the fear of being targeted in a mass shooting or concerns that the state or federal government may quickly limit access to guns in response to the killings. Some also talked about the possibility they may encounter the shooter, though that scenario became moot when he was found dead Friday night. Northeastern Firearms in Turner, where Kerr picked a Glock 43X, typically sells up to 20 firearms on a given day. They've been selling 5 times that since Thursday, said Nick Ayoda, the store's 44-year-old owner, and customers are opting for a slew of add-ons, including holsters and attachable flashlights. Quote, we're seeing the fear, Ayoda said. It's the reason people have used to finally do something they've been thinking of doing for a while. Yeah, I don't see the Democrats' gun grabbing going anywhere anytime soon. It is locked in stone, ladies and gentlemen. The Second Amendment is here to stay for a long, long time. Because now all polls indicate that even Democrats are buying guns now. And this is great, but also you have to... all I hope is that Democrats finally realize why you need firearms. And it's not just for hunting. It's not just for self-defense. There's a plethora of reasons why you should have a firearm. But I think, to me, something that I've noticed and felt like the last few days is because of the amount of firearms that we have in this country is almost unbreachable. There is no country on the face of the planet that would ever think about invading this country's soil. Never. I mean, it would be a nightmare for any country that rolled up onto the beaches of this country, without a doubt. Now, that is toe-to-toe, but that's not to say they wouldn't do some type of high-atmospheric nuclear explosion to wipe out the electric grid, starve people, cut off supply chains. There's a lot that countries could do to weaken this country before invading this country. But as far as just a full-on invasion of the United States, there is no freaking way. Because we now even Democrats are seeing the need for guns. And it could be any reason, whether it's a tyrannical government, that's my personal favorite, or if it's hunting, self-defense, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. There is no asterisk next to the Second Amendment. It doesn't say, oh, the right to bear arms unless, or the right to bear arms, and then ... except for. No. That is the right to bear arms for a reason. And so now that Democrats are starting to buy guns, I really don't see the whole gun grabbing thing going anywhere. So I think it's the perfect time for the Democrat Party to come to the table when it comes to fortifying our schools with single point entries, armed security guards, metal detectors, whatever the case is. Like, I think it's time now to have that conversation again. And I think they'd be able to get something through. But it should make everybody feel good. I mean, I don't know as far as these people training. Hopefully these Democrats are getting training, but because I don't know about you, but a radical leftist with pink hair and a neck tattoo having a gun is frankly quite terrifying to me. So hopefully this teenager goes and gets some training. That to me is necessary for anybody buying a firearm, is go get some training. 1 or 2 classes, that's all you need. But in certain states, like the state of Florida just did a constitutional carry law this year, and so you don't need a carry permit. So you're not required to go take a firearm safety course where you were before in order to get your license, your permit. But now you could just go in, buy a firearm, and just start concealed carrying it. So I think it's extremely important that anybody that does buy a firearm take at least 1 or 2 classes. You have to shoot the firearm at least once with an instructor to show you how to use it. Because listen, somebody that has a gun that doesn't know how to use it is almost as dangerous as a bad guy with a gun. Because I really don't want to be collateral damage when some radical leftist with pink hair goes on a shooting rampage because she thinks some guy's looking at her funny. All right. So like that to me is kind of terrifying. But the positive aspect of that is more people are buying firearms, which means it's going to make it harder for the government to strip us of our Second Amendment right. Because poll after poll shows that more and more people are buying guns. That's just how it is. People are starting to realize, okay, I'm not going to stop somebody trying to kill me with mean, nasty words. Like a taser is not going to do anything. Picking up a phone call and calling your police officers that get there in 15 minutes is not going to do anything. And I think people are starting to realize that. The invasion in Israel. The unfortunate thing about Israel is they have gun laws. No citizens are allowed to have guns there. Now, would that have been different if there would have been armed citizens to help fight back? Maybe. Maybe there wouldn't have been as many deaths. But that should explain to everybody why you cannot take people's Second Amendment right away and why it's so important and why the founders gave it to us. It could be for whatever reason you want it to be. But there is, without a doubt, a necessity for firearms, period. This whole notion that you could just pick up a phone and the FBI is going to be showing up at your door in 30 seconds is just it's not realistic. It is stupefying to think that's actually going to happen. And this, frankly, is how the leftists felt for the longest time. They're like, oh, what do you need guns for? What do you need guns? And they're still talking about it. The radical leftists that still want to take your guns away, they're still saying the same old excuses. What do you need a weapon of war? What do you need a killing machine for with 150 round clip? It's like they don't even know what they're talking about. That's the worst thing. That is, somebody trying to take away something from you that they have no idea what it even means or what it even is. That to me is the biggest problem. When you have somebody out there calling an AR-15 an assault rifle, and that's what the AR stands for, or somebody like Joe Biden that comes out and talks about he called it exploding bullets from a 100-round magazine from a machine gun. It's like these people have no idea what we're even talking about. And what I found ironic about Joe Biden is his stupid-ass kid left a gun in a trash can by a high school, and he wants to sit and lecture the American people about responsible gun ownership. It's just incredible, man. And same thing with taxes. This guy's sitting here talking about how billionaires and millionaires need to pay their fair share in taxes when this guy and his son have been evading the IRS for decades. So I don't want to hear it from these people. This is it's so typical from the Democrat Party, man. So typical. So yeah, that should bring you a little bit of hope. The more Democrats buy guns, the least likely it will be Democrats taking guns away from us. That's how I feel about it. So I think the common phrase would be, if you can't beat them, join them. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. Let's see if they'll come to the table about securing our damn schools. Single point entries, armed security guards, and hell, even armed teachers. I'm all for armed teachers, without a doubt. But this whole gun-free zone, that's got to go. I can't think of anything more stupid than advertising that nobody on the property has a means of self-defense. That to me is just, it's idiotic, it's stupid, and it's unrealistic. It's irrational, and it's typical for Democrats. And then here is one more. Speaking of our amendments, I give you the Second Amendment, and I raise you the First Amendment. So the Democratic Pravda fake news is trying to churn butter out of water with Trump's latest gaffe calling Viktor Orban the president of Turkey. These people are trying to sell this gaffe extremely hard, almost too hard. So first, I want you to listen to the audio that all the Pravda media outlets were playing, and then I'm going to play you the real audio, and it just further solidifies why our media is the enemy of the people. Here, check this out.
You know, I was very honored as a man. Viktor Orban, did anyone ever hear of him? He's probably like one of the strongest leaders anywhere in the world, and he's the leader of, right? He's the leader of Turkey, fronts on both Russia.
It's not really typical for Donald Trump to make a gaffe like that. And so the media was hitting on this hard. Politico came out with harsh headlines. I think, their headlines were talking about, Donald Trump needs a cognitive test. Oh my God, the Democrats on Twitter, they were losing their freaking minds, man. They were all over this because they know their guy, Joe Biden, has dementia. And so the first opportunity they can see to rag on Donald Trump about making one gaffe out of I don't know how many speeches he does, where Joe Biden makes a gaffe every time he talks. And so Democrats seen an opportunity here, and you know how they are. They never let a crisis go to waste. They never let an opportunity go to waste. So they took it, and they ran with it all day on Saturday, man. But here's the thing. This is the one thing that none of them are telling you, and they do this all the time. This is exactly why the media is the enemy of the people. Here, check this out.
But Viktor Orban, and he's the head of Hungary, and he runs it tough. Let me tell you, he runs it properly. He runs it strong.
So again, they clipped it up, and they completely took it out of context. And this is exactly what the media has been doing to Donald Trump for almost a decade now. And this is exactly why we call them the Pravda media here on this show, because they are the Pravda media. These people lie with impunity. And what's crazy is they may make a retraction. They may apologize. Well, they'll never apologize. They still haven't apologized for the Russia collusion hoax they pushed onto the American people for 4 years. They're still pushing that stuff. You still have Democrats out there that believe Donald Trump is some type of Russian agent. But I digress. But this is exactly what the media does and has been doing for the last 8 years. And the problem is they push a story out there like they did with this, talking about how Donald Trump needs a cognitive test and how he's not as witty as he used to be and all this stuff. It's lies. It's what it is. It's propaganda. And the people see it. And by the time people get the truth, they've already accepted what they've seen and have already retained that as being true. This is the problem with our media today, is they pump out all these fake stories like Donald Trump calling soldiers suckers and losers. You guys remember that one weeks before the election? Yeah, that was a lie. How many times has the media lied to the American people, and the American people don't actually get the truth until months later? Well, this is exactly one of those things, and this is exactly why I wanted to talk about this. And so now you got to hear both sides of the story. So when you see on Twitter or you see on any type of social media outlet where they're talking about how Donald Trump called Viktor Orban the leader of Turkey, just make sure you tell them, yeah, did you hear the rest of the clip? Because, look, Donald Trump by no means is losing any footing in his campaign right now. And it just pisses me off that these people completely ignore all the gaffes from Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a gaffe machine. I constantly say this as a joke, but now it's serious, that Joe Biden should just turn the teleprompter around so that we can read it for ourselves. It would be much easier on him and on us. Joe Biden makes a gaffe every time he does a speech, and then Donald Trump makes one tiny mistake and then fixes it the sentence after, and the entire Democrat Party is blowing it up, talking about how Donald Trump needs to take a cognitive test. I'm still waiting for Joe Biden's cognitive test. It is shocking to me how these people tried to invoke the 25th Amendment against Donald Trump during his presidency and trying to say that his mental stability wasn't there and trying to say that he was too mentally, saying that his mental capacity wasn't there. But yet Joe Biden hasn't given us a cognitive test. His doctor, a former Obama doctor, has come out and said that Joe Biden is showing all signs of dementia and that he should be taking a cognitive test, but he won't. He refuses. And when you ask the White House, hey, why don't we have a cognitive test from Joe Biden? They just completely ignore the question or just lie. Joe Biden, the American people should be demanding a cognitive test from Joe Biden. If he doesn't want to give a test, fine. Then at the very least, give us a list of the medications that he is taking. That's it, because once you figure that out, then you'll know exactly what we already know. This guy is a walking gaffe machine. And so for these people to sit there and raise all this rhetoric about Donald Trump and one gaffe that he made that he quickly corrected the very next sentence is ludicrous. And it's just so typical from the leftist media. However, I do have to defend the leftist reporters, even when they purposely lie and give false leading information. So I believe so firmly in the First Amendment and the media's ability, yes, to lie to the American people and spread propaganda and do whatever they're doing, because I think the First Amendment is so important for both sides. Okay, I know that Democrats are the party of censorship. Now 70% of Democrats support government censorship. I get that. But I think it's important for Republicans to stand strong with the First Amendment, and we must defend the First Amendment at all costs, even if that means defending the leftist media. So I got an article here from Gateway Pundit, hat tip to Christina Layla. CBS reporter Catherine Herridge faces contempt charges for refusing to reveal her confidential source. So CBS reporter Catherine Herridge is facing contempt charges for refusing to disclose the identity of her confidential source. In August, U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, Christopher Cooper, ordered Herridge to sit down for a sworn deposition regarding a confidential source she used for a 2017 story she covered on a Department of Defense-funded school that was at the center of federal investigations over Chinese military ties while she was at Fox News. The judge ordered Herridge to turn over her sources in response to a lawsuit that was filed by Chinese-American scientist Yanping Chen against the FBI. Chen subpoenaed Herridge in an effort to find out who her sources were. Herridge argued she would not be forced to disclose her sources because of her First Amendment rights. Judge Cooper, an Obama appointee, disagreed and forced Herridge to unmask her source. And this is what the judge said, quote, "The court recognizes both the vital importance of a free press and the critical role that confidential sources play in the work of investigative journalists like Herridge. But applying the binding case law of this circuit, the court concludes that Chen's need for the requested evidence overcomes Heritage's qualified First Amendment privilege in this case." Bullshit. Don't do it. Do not do it. Who the hell do these judges think they are, man? I've had about enough of these judges, these radical, bomb-throwing Democrat judges that are appointed by Obama. I've had enough of them. These judges are lawless. If the judge that's overseeing the Trump case in New York City is not enough evidence to show you that these judges have completely lost their mind and their ability to be impartial, then I don't know what else to tell you. But these judges are off the chain, and somebody, I don't know who, it's exactly why I wrote the Supreme Court. Somebody needs to come in and get a hold of these judges. I don't know how they're going to do it, but my first suggestion is something that Mike Davis suggested, is they need to break these judges up. They have to break up the D.C. court. It is a freaking swamp in there. They all eat lunch with each other. They all eat dinner with each other. It is one gigantic swamp that is litigating the swamp. And I think it's just absolutely egregious that we have that type of situation happening in our nation's capital. So if you have a judge, an Obama appointee, that's forcing a reporter to hand over her sources, or she's going to go to jail, that to me is a big problem. And he doesn't stop there. Oh no, he makes a threat. This is his threat. With contempt proceedings now teed up, one of two outcomes appears likely. Either Herridge will be held in contempt in the near future and can immediately appeal that order, or, as sometimes occurs in these cases, the sources may release Herridge from the privilege rather than watch her undergo the consequences of contempt, Judge Cooper wrote in an order on Friday. So this guy's giving an ultimatum. This judge is essentially saying, either you give it up or the person you're protecting give it up. Somebody's going to give me these sources. Why does this judge want this source so bad? I don't get it. This seems pretty weird to me. And the fact that this judge is an Obama appointee in our nation's swamp, in the Washington swamp, should just be a giant neon sign blinking danger, danger. Do not give this judge anything. And because of this judge's rhetoric and all the judges and all the atrocities we're watching take place, our nation's capital turning into like a Soviet Union gulag, this entire system, the entire judiciary system in Washington, D.C. needs to be smashed with a sledgehammer. They need to be broken up and scattered out all across the country. Because this is clear and obvious that the D.C. courts have turned into one giant, one giant protection racket. Our justice system in D.C. has officially been politicized, and it's terrifying to me. And this is exactly what I wrote to the Supreme Court. I wrote this to Judge Roberts, who may or may not be part of that swamp, but I wrote him anyways. Why? Because there's nowhere else to go. The Supreme Court is the highest court of the land. If the Supreme Court is overtaken by the swamp, then it's over. Then we absolutely have no justice. We have no impartiality, no justice in this country. And that, to me, is a huge issue. And we're seeing it time and time again. The judges that are sitting up on that Capitol, in that circuit, need to be scattered out. And half of them probably need to be impeached. But to have a justice system like this running out of our nation's capital I don't know how big of a warning sign you can give for a totalitarian nation, but that's exactly the type of stuff that happens. And so I think it's pretty concerning that this CBS reporter, Catherine Herridge, needs to make an ultimatum, needs to make a choice, whether she gives up her sources or the source actually turns themselves in order to keep her out of jail. Like, that to me is like some straight up Soviet Union stuff back in the 1930s, man. They asked the court to hold Miss Herridge in contempt, a criminal charge that can bring jail time. U.S. District Judge Christopher Cooper, who gave the order, said on October 27th that Miss Herridge would likely be held in contempt unless she provided the information. Not good, folks. Not good at all. So again, yes, I may call the left-wing news Pravda propaganda, but at the same time, the First Amendment always comes first. I will always protect the First Amendment no matter what, even if that means having to defend CBS. I think Catherine Herridge is a little bit center-left. I don't think she's too radical. I don't think she's some radical Democrat. No, she's not voting for Trump, certainly not. But she's not some radical leftist, but CBS is, and I just don't like to see news reporters being forced to turn over their sources, okay? Or they're going to be going to jail. That, to me, is like some real Soviet Union stuff. And you notice how it's all Obama judges doing this? Obama put some real radical judges in the D.C. courts, man. I thought Donald Trump actually filled a lot of these seats, but apparently not. Apparently he filled the seats with radicals too, because these Trump judges are just as bad. You know, they're sentencing some of these J6 protesters to years in prison for just walking into the Capitol, which is the last story that I want to talk about. So I got another article here. Proud Boys member Mark Brew was arrested by federal agents at gunpoint with his mother. He was found guilty of obstruction of an official proceeding for attending a protest, while Democrat Jamal Bowman walks free. So Mark Anthony Brew was seen on January 6 raising his phone to document the events as they unfolded that day at the U.S. Capitol. Mark Brew was found guilty earlier this month for attending a protest and an obstruction of an official proceeding because he was in attendance at the protest. The obstruction charge is a felony. The Biden DOJ also found him guilty of civil disorder for attending the protest and 5 misdemeanors. Federal agents pulled guns on Mark and his mother when he was arrested. D.C. Judge Boasberg found him guilty of all charges. He awaits sentencing. Mark Brew did not shut down an official congressional proceeding by pulling a fire alarm like radical Democrat Jamal Bowman. Mark's crime was attending the J6 protests and walking inside the U.S. Capitol. Before Joe Biden, conservative Americans had the right to protest their government. Today, conservatives are jailed and their lives are ruined for attending a protest. Mark wrote to the Gateway Pundit. And his letter goes on. It's a huge letter that I'll leave in my podcast description, but I got to hurry up. We're tight. We're running out of time here. And he says, just at the end, I knew at that point something about our country and the relationship between us and all of our assumed government had changed dramatically. It's been 3 years now, and I've just been found guilty of criminal trespassing and domestic terrorism. I would have thought Americans would not allow this to stand in this country, not the land of the free and the home of the brave. For me, at least, and a hand-plucked, targeted group of others, it has become the land of the fearful, the home of the slave. Even if I were the only one that can recognize tyranny and totalitarianism, then I will stand alone to shout, I do not consent. How can an institution assembled by men maintain the standing of having just powers derived from the consent of the governed if one good American is given over to tyranny by their actions? Do we now accept kangaroo trials where the accused is robbed of due process and denied basic elements of defense simply because it might expose the fallibility of an unjust democracy? Regardless of your political placement on the spectrum, if precedence is established in our country, then it could and it will happen to you. So there you go. So these people are being locked up and sentenced to years in prison. And just like that, just like he said, this guy is being locked away for years in prison for obstruction of an official proceeding, but yet Jamal Bowman gets to obstruct an official proceeding and gets nothing. Gets charged with the misdemeanor, and then the courts drop it, and he has to pay a measly fine. Like, this is exactly what people are talking about. You have Jamal Bowman on camera walking up to the doors with giant red signs that say fire exit only. He knocks the signs down on the floor, walks over to the fire alarm, pulls it, and then walks away. Blatantly on camera and for everybody to see. And yet, this guy who walks into the Capitol building for 5 minutes with a cell phone, takes footage, and is sent away for years in prison? He was charged for obstructing an official proceeding because he delayed the certification of the vote? That's what that is, right? But yet Jamal Bowman delays the certification of a vote, Jamal Bowman delays a vote, and he gets nothing, a measly fine. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a two-tier justice system, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And it is the beginning days of totalitarianism, as we're having to sit here and watch our country fall apart while our government is locking up its own citizens, spying on its own citizens, and apparently not even doing what they're supposed to do. Like, I don't know, maybe knocking on the door of a psychopath that hears voices that tells him to shoot his fellow soldiers. And maybe if these people weren't so obsessed with chasing down Trump supporters, like we're living back in East Germany in the 1930s, maybe the events that took place in Israel wouldn't have happened. I don't know, maybe. Or maybe the police could have, I don't know, caught a guy before he went and killed 18 people on a mass shooting rampage. These are the types of things I'm talking about. It pisses me off that I see Trump supporters, that I see people that went to their capital to petition their government, their First Amendment right, being locked away in prison for years. Okay? This sends a clear message to the rest of us. If you go to the government, if you go to the Capitol and you protest and you support Donald Trump, we will throw you in prison and throw away the key. We will lock you away forever. But if you're Jamal Bowman, a Democrat that pulls a fire alarm and obstructs an official proceeding, there's nothing that will happen to you. In fact, we'll just give you a fine and you can go on your way. Or how about the Hamas insurrection that happened, where Rashida Tlaib organized a protest that went inside of the Capitol building, okay? Inside the Capitol building. 300 people may have got arrested, but do you think any of them people are going to be getting sent away to prison for years? Are any of them going to be charged with obstructing official proceeding when they did exactly what most of these J6 protesters did? I'm not talking about the violent ones. I'm not talking about the people that broke out windows. I'm talking about people, hundreds of people that walked into the Capitol that are being sent away to a gulag for years. But yet these people, because they are organized by Rashida Tlaib, so it's clear that they're Democrats, they get to walk into that same exact Capitol, do the same exact thing, and yet they're probably going to be let go with minor charges. This is the two-tier justice system that everybody's terrified of, and we're watching it happen right in front of our eyes. We have a judiciary system, we have a justice system inside our nation's capital, inside Washington, D.C., which is now the new Stalingrad, forcing news reporters to turn over their sources or they go to jail. What the hell is happening in Washington, D.C.? We must fix this situation in our nation's capital because the Washington, D.C. is starting to turn into freaking Stalingrad, man. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for today's show. We're out of time. As always, I will leave these articles in my podcast description. Go ahead and give them a read. They're pretty long articles, but like I always say, they're important to read. You must read these things. And if you have any questions, get a hold of me, StevenTaurielloShow@gmail.com. The reason why I leave the articles in my podcast description is so that if you're talking with a friend or you're talking with a family member and you are talking about what we discussed on the show for that day, you can always go back to my show and all the research materials will be right there. You don't have to go digging for the materials. I do all the legwork. All you have to do is just go to my podcast description or YouTube. My YouTube channel has all the articles as well. And my Rumble channel has all the articles as well. I do all the legwork for you so that you guys can, if you're talking with somebody, a friend or family member, and you want to get a hold of the research materials, if you have a question or you want to show them something or take a screenshot of something, it's all right there. I did it for you. It really helps if you share the show with your friends and family, so we can get the word out there. We got to start informing people. We have to start informing our fellow Americans. And look how far we have come in just a couple years. The conservative movement is making real headway. Mike Johnson seems like he's going to be a pretty solid speaker. There's some things he's a little iffy on, and we're going to be talking about that in the next show. As of spending, it seems like he's on point. We're just going to have to let this play out. It seems like he's going to be pretty transparent. He was on Maria Bartiromo on Sunday. And he seems like he's the real deal, man. But I'm telling you right now, the guy is already 50 times better than McCarthy. I think we're in good hands. He's going to do a great job. So we're going to be talking about that on the next show, plus a lot of other things. Gaza, the second strike from Israel on Gaza has commenced. It's been happening all night. The casualties, we're not really sure as of right now. There is no communications going in or out of Gaza, but apparently, Elon Musk has agreed to send Starlink into Gaza, but only to recommended NGO or nationally recognized NGO that's in Gaza will receive Starlink communication so that they can communicate. The numbers we're getting so far is like 7,700 casualties. I don't know how true that is, but we need to be careful in the fog of war. There is going to be a lot of misinformation. You're going to have actors. I forget what they call them, crisis actors. You're going to have crisis actors, and that's exactly what we're starting to see now. There are crisis actors, Palestinian crisis actors that are in there. They're faking injuries. They're faking videos. They're making videos and posting them on social media to try and pull on the heartstrings of Americans to get the attacks to stop. This is what they've been doing. for years and years and years. They attack Israel, kill a bunch of people, and then when Israel retaliates, they're like, no, you can't. You'll blow up a school or you'll blow up a hospital. And Israel's not having any of it this time. They already said they're going to go in, they're going to eradicate Hamas, and then they're leaving. It's done. As of right now, they have turned entire portions of Gaza into rubble, and their biggest problem is going to be the tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip. It is going to be brutal. It is going to be pure carnage, and urban warfare is already difficult, but imagine going into urban warfare in tunnels where the enemy knows you're coming. It is going to be complete carnage on both sides. So just be prepared. Keep your head on a swivel when it comes to information coming out of that war, because there's going to be a lot of misinformation, and there always is. That's why they call it the fog of war. So give it some time. If you think something's not right, or if you see something that's pretty shocking, just give it some time, and the truth will reveal itself. It always does. I'm seeing a lot of misinformation. I'm seeing crisis actors. There's a crisis actor right now that's posting a bunch of fake videos and essentially fabricated story plots. He's posting videos all over social media where he'll actually, rip his clothes and dirty himself up and have men carry him on a stretcher, and he's not even injured. And he'll do that for multiple different videos. He'll be crying on one video, and I even have reports to where he'll get right to the front line of where the IDF is, and he'll shoot rocks with a slingshot at the IDF soldiers. And so when the IDF soldiers return fire with their guns, that's when he flips that's when he has the camera and he takes video of him being shot at. But what he doesn't post is him just hitting one of the IDF soldiers with a rock. And so this is the type of stuff you're going to be seeing, because this is Hamas's strategy. This is what they do. This is how they think they're going to get away with just slaughtering 13 or 1,400 innocent Jews, but it's not going to happen. And I am definitely in support of Israel going in there, eradicating Hamas, and then leaving. I do understand there's going to be unintended consequences. I do understand there's going to be collateral damage, dead civilians and dead innocent people. I get that. I pray for those people. I feel bad for those people, but nobody ever said war was pretty, folks. This is what war looks like. And this is exactly why people say you do not want to go to war, is stuff just like this. A lot of loved ones are lost needlessly. This is exactly why I hate war. I hate people dying, man. It is so just insane to me. Like, it's so needless. In 2023, we're killing each other in war. I guess it's just human nature. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys had a good weekend. I hope you guys have a good Monday. Don't fret. As you're listening to this, I will be there right with you, busting my ass just like you. So I want you guys to have a good day. Have a great week. God bless you, and God bless America. You guys have a good day. Bye-bye.